and welcome to the Record Review. I'll look back at the week here at Westminster. Coming up on this programme, the opposition keeps up the pressure over the government's planned shake-up of England's NHS.
He knows in his heart of hearts this is a complete disaster, this bill. That's why his aides are saying the Health Secretary should be taken out and shot.
We've got to put more money into the NHS, and we are putting the money in, but it also means we've got to reform the NHS.
There's outrage in the Commons as government told it can't deport a radical preacher. And we hear about the surprising early career of one of Britain's best-loved authors.
There are about 12 reporters working for the Mirror of Parliament during this time, and so you can perhaps estimate that 12 of this was actually written by Dickens.
But let's begin with the government's controversial plans for England's health service. The health bill returned to the Lords on Wednesday night, and within an hour the government suffered defeat on part of its plans. Earlier in the day, Prime Minister's questions, before peers even said a word about it, Ed Miliband had advised David Cameron to drop the whole thing. The bill aims to get doctors to take lead in commissioning services and increase competition. But the bill's taken a battering since it was published, with the Minister at one point pausing it for consultation. Ed Miliband highlighted the opposition it faces from health professionals.
Listen to what Claire Gerrard, the chair of the Royal College of GPs... Mr. Speaker. So when the people they want put at the heart of the NHS say things about their bill, they're just groan. It said it all about the bitches of it. Listen to what she said, and I quote, "This bill is a burden. It makes no sense. It's incoherent. It won't deal with the big issues, and it will result in a health service that certainly will never match the health service we had 12 months ago." Mr. Speaker, which part of that does he understand?
Well, let's look at what's happened to the NHS over the last 18 months. Yes, let's look at the figures. 100,000 patients treated more every month. 4,000 extra doctors since the NHS. The number of clinical staff up. The level of hospital-acquired infections down. The number of people who are in mixed-sex wards down by 94%. That is what's happening because you've got a combination of money going in and reform.
All his attention is on this pointless top-down reorganisation, and the front line is suffering. The number of people waiting more than 18 weeks up under him. A&E targets being missed, cancelled operations. Mr. Speaker, I won't just give up and stop wasting billions and drop his bill.
Let me remind the right honourable gentleman of the clear test that he set for the reforms and he set for the government. He said the test was whether waiting times and waiting lists would come down. Let me now give him the figures. The figures are these. Inpatient waiting times, down. Outpatient waiting time, down. The number of people waiting more than a year, down to its lowest ever. The number of people waiting for 6 months, down to its lowest level. And indeed, the number of people on the waiting list. What he said was the clear test, that is down. That's what it proves. In fact, this Labour leader, even when he moves the goalpost, he can put it back in net.
Mr. Speaker, the person who's moving the goalpost is the Prime Minister. The reality is that the key test that was set for the health service was the number of people waiting more than 18 weeks. And that number is up 43% since the general election. However much he twists and turns, that is the reality. And look, Mr. Speaker, he knows his heart of hearts this is a complete disaster, this bill. That's why his aides are saying the Health Secretary should be taken out and shot, because they know it's a disaster. The reality about this bill is this. The doctors know it's bad for the NHS, the nurses know it's bad for the NHS, and patients know it's bad for the NHS. Every day he fights this bill. Every day, trust in him on the NHS ebbs away, and every day it becomes clearer the health service is not safe in his hands.
I'm going to tell you, the career prospects for our honourable friend are a lot better than his. That's what this is about. This is not a campaign to save the NHS. This is a campaign to try and save his leadership. And I make the prediction, the NHS will go on getting better, and his prospects will go on getting worse.
David Cameron and Ed Miliband. As we heard, the Prime Minister's questions played against the backdrop of media rumours that the Health Secretary has lost support inside Number 10 and that dumping the bill together has been considered and ultimately dismissed. But what does all this say about how to handle a controversial bill? Earlier I brought together the former Labour Health Minister, Lord Hunt, the Conservative MP, Sir Roger Gale, who's on the Procedure Committee, and Keith Griggs, a reputation management expert. I asked Roger Gale if highly contentious bills didn't cry out for pre-legislative scrutiny, that's to say detailed consideration before hitting the floor of the House.
I think, by and large, pre-legislative scrutiny is a good idea because it gives the chance for all of fact to be due before you go into standing committee. And provided somebody's prepared to listen, and I have to say I've presided over some bills where lots of evidence has been given and ignored, so it's not necessarily the case. But provided somebody's prepared to listen, then yes, it's probably a good thing. There is a difficulty here, which is that at the end of the day, governments have to govern. And if you're faced with this kind of situation that the present coalition has inherited, then you have to deal with it. And while it's nice to all the consensus, I'm afraid that's not always possible. At the end of the day, somebody has to make a decision and get on with it.
So you've been in the Commons since the 1980s. You've seen governments deal with tree bills before, thinking about things like the poll tax. I mean, what lesson can you learn from the past, from the way difficult issues have been dealt with?
Well, I think the only lesson you can learn is that you put in the homework at the beginning and you try to make sure that the legislation is watertight. It is, of course, hugely easier if you've got a parliamentary majority. In the kind of situation that government's faced with at the moment, both in the Commons and in the Lords, where there's no majority at all. It's a very difficult situation indeed, particularly if you're taking through, as all governments have, contentious legislation.
Right, well, Lord, isn't there a point here? I mean, the government is the government. Should it get its way? The law making this more difficult than it needs to?
I don't think so. I mean, the last Labour government was defeated 33% of all the votes that took place. Current government's only been defeated about 18%, and that's because the coalition has a political majority in the House of Lords of 70. The crossbenchers, of course, can even it up, and that's why when they support one of our amendments, we sometimes can win. But our win rate is 18%, and very often crossbenchers split their vote. So it's much more difficult. Nonetheless, the Lords is still acting, I think, as an effective scrutiny chamber. After all, what it's there to do. Very disappointing that on welfare reform bill, government is using financial privilege to kind of undermine the Lord's role, though.
All right. Well, Keith Griggs, what do you make of all this, looking at it from the outside looking in? Has there been, when it comes to things like health, a failure to communicate? Because that's really what's gone wrong.
Yes, I think it has been, yeah. I think the failure comes in not really putting the advantages of health bill through strongly enough. So people think of it being a bad bill and of just being a bad guy. And so everyone's really concerned about the NHS and, you know, being a backward to private patients and that sort of thing. Now, that may or not be true, but it's the way it's come across.
So if you'd have been at the start of this process and been giving advice to Andrew Lansley, or been giving advice when things started to come a little bit wrong,
yes,
what would you have suggested as an alternative way to get this go forward?
I think he should have... I know they'd make some attempt at listening, changing things around and making it be seen that that's what they were doing. But I think some people have seen that as a bit of a sham, that they're really just trying to push the agenda through. And that was just all to play acting. But I think if they'd have done that more genuinely, people would be more receptive to it.
Would you go?
Well, I'm in a tricky position because I won't comment on the legislation because I presided over it in committee and acting the Speaker, I'm not supposed to. But what I will say is this, that the government clearly did take on board what was going on behind the scenes because the bill was recommitted to committee. Now, I've been chairing committees for 15 years, and I can't call another bill being recommitted in that way, and significant changes were made. And the other thing I would say is that, purely from the point of view of parliamentary management, the Minister of State responsible, Simon Burns, was a consummate professional. And indeed, to be absolutely fair, was the opposition front bench. So it was a very professional, very thorough parliamentary job in the Commons. The Lords had their say. Commons has disagreed with their Lordship's House. And I think at this point, I agree with it, I think the Commons is entirely within its right to say we're now going to exercise privilege because this legislation has gone to the statute book. Whether it's good, bad or indifferent is immaterial. The government has the right to govern.
Well, don't you have to give government a little bit of credit here? And it did take this absolutely unprecedented step of pausing the bill, rethinking it. It has taken on a huge number of amendments, so it has tried to take on some of the concerns.
It certainly brought some amendments. It had to concede lots of issues. But I think at heart, the real reason it is in so trouble is that people in the health service and patients are just not convinced. After all, the government inherited the NHS in good condition. New hospitals, waiting lists have been slashed, and people were happy. You know, the British Social Attitude Survey showed the highest satisfaction rate ever. But what people can't understand is, of course, you have to make progress, you have to deal with issues, but why, when the NHS was in such good condition, why you tear it up by its roots? Have a wholly disruptive reorganisation, and at the same time, say to the NHS, you've got to make £20 million of efficiency savings. The government has never really answered that.
I think there's more than a thing of frustration on Conservative backbench about the way this has all turned out.
No, I don't. I think there's a media storm over it. There's been a feeding frenzy this week, and again, it's completely separate from anything to do with legislation. It is what media does. I take issue. Philip was a health minister in the last government, so he knows the system fairly well. I would take issue with some of the things that he said without getting embroiled in the nitty-gritty of legislation. There were things that needed to change. There is a significant number of general practitioners, quite clearly, I know that from my own constituency and my own GP, who are wholly in favour of the decentralisation of management of facilities and services. I don't think it's right to say the public are up in arms about it. So as a constituency MP, and Philip doesn't get these, but I do. People write to their members of Parliament, they don't write to members of the House of Lords. As a constituency MP, I have had attempt to say no letters about this. I'll now get a of them, but from constituents, as opposed to healthcare professionals, virtually no comment at all. And I find that quite surprising, if the level of anguish was as Philip describes it.
But there has been a lot of concern from healthcare professionals. That, you know, you can't deny that there has been concern expressed by people at the Royal College of GP.
Well, glad you said that, because just take the Royal College of GP. That survey, forgive me, was very slender indeed. For the President of the Royal College to say, doctors are opposed to this, is stretching credibility rather a long way. And I'm told, check it and find out if I'm right, that there was no restriction upon doctors voting more than once in that survey. I think the big question mark over that.
All right, well, Keith Griggs, let's give the last word to you then. Government has had a pretty tough time with this bill. It's still got to get through the House of Lords. What do you think, if anything, it can do to get some support for it at this stage? And what about Andrew Lansley? We've heard this report from down the street suggesting that someone thinks he should be taken outside and shot. Can he survive?
Taking the second point first, it's hard to say. I think he may survive, but it might be that David Cameron thinks it's in his best interest making the full guard. So we'll have to see what happens about that one. In terms of getting it through, I think there has to be more spin, or it has to be, the perception of it has to change. That people see it as more of a positive thing rather than just, something bad that will hurt all these nurses and GPs and patients.
But people don't like sin. There's a feeling that we've had plenty of that. People don't like to...
They don't like word sin, but they do like to feel... They do want to feel positive about things. They do want to solve ideas. Then they're not just going to jump up and say, yes, that's a great idea, unless it's presented in that way to them.
All right, gentlemen, it's very, very interesting. Thank you very much. Griggs, Lord Hannah and Sir Gale, thank you for joining us. On Tuesday, Conservative MPs called on the Home Secretary to ignore a ruling by the European Court of Human Rights blocking the deportation of the radical Islamic cleric Abu Qatada. He's been convicted in Jordan of terrorist offences. Mrs May told MPs that the British government had sought assurances from the Jordanians that he would be tortured if he was returned.
Despite agreement of the House of Lords that Qatada should be deported, and despite accepting that he would not face mistreatment in Jordan, last month the European Court of Human Rights ruled against his deportation. It did so on the grounds that deportation would be in violation of Article 6 of the Convention, right to a fair trial, because of the risk that evidence obtained from the torture of others would be used against him.
The restrictions she will have available to her in 3 months' time are a far cry from the restrictions she and the courts understandably believe are necessary now to protect the public, including the 22-hour curfew, no access to the internet and no access to phones. She cannot blame the European Court for her decision to weaken British counter-terror powers.
How can she possibly justify allowing a situation at the end of April with the Olympic Games and the Queen's Jubilee to go through to terrorism prevention intervention measures which would do away with any of the restrictions that she herself this afternoon has advocated in bail conditions?
I say to the right honourable gentleman that I wish to be in a position where we can port Abu Qatada, so he's not in this country when the Olympics come.
Signatories to the ECHR, like Italy, have simply ignored in exceptional circumstances rulings from the court. But I asked the Home Secretary whether or not Her Majesty's government has considered that course of action, the Qatada case.
As I have made clear in my earlier responses, we are looking at every option that is available to us under the current legal regime in order to deal with this issue.
Does the Home Secretary accept that this is a rather pathetic, humiliating situation that the British government is in, that we're in a situation now where a proud sovereign country cannot actually deport foreign terrorists out of this country? It's so good the Home Secretary is simply huffing and puffing about this issue. What the British public want to know is, if we cannot secure the reforms we need from the European Court of Human Rights, are we going to withdraw from the European Convention? Because without that commitment, it's simply going to be spit in the wind.
Surely this international law is an ass. It's quite clear that this man is a terrorist and he loves our weakness. He considers he's at war with us. That's what he thinks. And in wartime conditions, our government can take extraordinary actions. Surely he can't come out. He should stay in prison if we can't send him to Jordan, and he should stay in prison until he can be sent to Jordan.
We have vicious, nasty terrorists. We have the Supreme Court say send him home. We have a friendly government. We have a gutsy Home Secretary. She's listened to what Parliament has said today. Mr. Speaker, she could become a national hero if she leaves this chamber, picks up the phone and orders him to be sent back to Jordan tonight.
I'm also grateful for the contributions my honourable friend make to these debates, but as I have said earlier, I think the right course for the government to be taking at this time is to be pursuing negotiations with the Jordanians to see if we can receive the assurances that would enable us to support Abu Qatada at the same time as looking at our legal options.
Now for a look at some of the other news around Westminster in brief. Fishermen in England have been urged to take new European funding to life-saving emergency stops and spare vessels following a campaign by a Cornish MP. Cheryl Murray's husband died last year when a toggle on his hook got caught in equipment. It's thought that an emergency stop button could have saved him.
In some instances, the use of an emergency stop button has been entirely responsible for saving the fisherman's life. The incident on board Danielle is one such example. A deckhand sustained major injuries, but without the emergency stop button, his injuries most certainly have been fatal.
Ministers are considering introducing the compulsory microchipping of dogs in England as part of measures aimed at reducing attacks and encouraging responsible ownership.
The cost of rehoming each stray is £1,100. So the economic cost of irresponsible dog ownership in this country is enormous, and let alone the human damage that can be caused by out-of-control dogs.
In Lords, there was a call for a celebration in 2015 to mark the 800th anniversary of Magna Carta. Lord Lee said there were very special reasons for Parliament to commemorate what happened in June 1215.
The pageant which preceded the tournament in the 1215 itself was preceded by a ceremonial exchange of hostages between England and Scotland. what would the noble lord think of a replay of that? Other events might also include, such as an inconclusive outcome of the general election. Would one way forward in those circumstances be a series of ceremonial jousts between the parties in which the noble lord himself might call upon to participate?
Now, the 7th of February marked the 200th anniversary of the birth of Charles Dickens, and it was revealed that to mark the event, the Culture Secretary Jeremy Hunt presented all members of the Cabinet with copies of one of Great Man's books. At questions to the Deputy Prime Minister, Mr Hunt's gift prompted this rather cheeky intervention from one Labour MP.
I understand at this morning's Cabinet meeting that the Culture Secretary gave the Deputy Prime Minister for Dickens Day a copy of Oliver Twist. Did his Tory Cabinet colleagues burst into a chorus of, "Can see yourselves one of us"?